Alrighty, let's talk about making your drawing and exposing your plate. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this. And if you look at tutorials online, and there are any number of them out there, both from the manufacturer and from other artists, they have they've got a couple of different techniques for using photographs and things like that. And what we're going to do is go for the simplest version, a direct drawing, which will mimic the acid etching that we were originally planning on doing in class. And in fact, will ultimately be safer and in some ways easier and something that you could do at home. So maybe not necessarily bad, but I do want to stick with the traditional way instead of using photographs to come up with the images. And if that's something you want to do, then you and I can talk later and we can go through how to do that. But I would say first to sacrifice one of your plates or a portion of one of your plates and make several smaller plates that you can experiment on before you actually go and do a really elaborate drawing and then have to face all of the elements of the learning curve that come with the actual exposure and getting a good image. So that's where your scissors or your tin snips come in. Go into a dark room, a bathroom or something maybe that doesn't have a light or a window or a closet, and find yourself a dark place, pull out one of your plates, and then cut off a portion of it, avoiding your fingers, and then you can use those to experiment and to kind of get the hang of things before actually committing to a bigger plate. So that being said, what we've got to do is we have got to come up with a way to block portions of light from hitting this light sensitive surface and allow portions of light to hit that surface. Because this polymer surface, this kind of gray-green color that you see on there, kind of sticky, a little bit gummy, this is a coating that has been applied that is hardened by ultraviolet light. So when it's unhardened, when it's never been exposed, it is water miscible, meaning that you can wash this coating off with water. Once it has been exposed, it becomes hardened and it is no longer water soluble. And so that difference between the two is what is actually going to give us our grooves in the plate that are going to hold the ink to actually make the print. So you can do two things. You can take the protective sheet off, right? You can go into that same dark room, bathroom, closet, and you can take your plate and you can remove this protective clear sheet, and then you can wrap this up in a towel, put it back in the bag so that it's protected, and you can draw directly on this protective sheet. Or you can go to an office supply or a drugstore or something like that, and they might have sheets of mylar or sheets of acetate, clear material that they sell for overhead projectors and things like that, and you can purchase one of those. Either way you want to do it is fine. Both of them work, essentially equally well. It just takes an extra step if you're going to use the sheet that's already supplied with it. And it's on this sheet that we're actually going to do our drawing. And I've actually made a couple of marks here. You can see that we've got a fine mark, which I use the fine point Sharpie. And then we've got a much thicker mark where I use the regular Sharpie. Now, one thing this technique, in the way that we're doing it, is not capable of is large areas of black or of solid color. Because whenever you do a thick line like this, it's going to make a thick trench in the resulting plate. And that thick trench, when you go to wipe it and take the ink out, your wiping is literally going to dig down inside because the trench is wide enough that it allows that to go, whatever material, towel, cloth that you're using, to go in there, and it will pull the ink out of the center and leave two little dark lines on either side where those little ledges are. So if you want to get dark areas, you're going to have to use cross-hatching, hatching and cross-hatching. And even with those, try not to get them too close together, because if you do, they're going to bleed into one another and you're going to end up with a big area, and that's going to cause you some problems when you go to actually printing. So fine lines work best, hatching and cross hatching to be able to get your dark areas. And you know, this is not photosensitive, so you can take this out, or if you're using that piece of acetate or mylar, and you can, you know, work on it for hours and hours. You just need something like Sharpies that will actually draw on that surface, and you know, use your lines, use your hatching, use your cross hatching, and you can, you know, you can spend 3 days just working on your drawing, no problem. But the key point is the exposure. When you place this back onto your photosensitive plate, and then you expose it to ultraviolet light. And that is a very time-limited kind of situation, because the second that you take this out of that black bag, it's going to start being exposed to light, even if it's at low levels. And that's going to begin to harden that polymer. And we definitely don't want that. So once you have your drawing right, time is of the essence in getting it onto the plate and then exposing it to sunlight. So the idea is take it out, put this on real quick, line it up, go somewhere where you've got good direct sunlight, and frankly I suggest going outside. A lot of modern windows and car windows have UV inhibitors built into them to protect your upholstery and your furniture from fading. And so what you really want is you want direct sunlight hitting this, and it does not take long at all. You know, you'll see a lot of videos and a lot of tutorials and things where they're using artificial sources of 5000K light, and you know, even the company website suggests, you know, 20 to 30 seconds of exposure. But I have found that between 10 and 20 seconds of exposure is easily enough to do it. So do not expose it too long, because as you're exposing it to the sunlight, even though this is blocking sunlight from portions of it, other bits of light, photons, are reflecting and going underneath it, and they're undermining your line. So keep your exposure simple. And the reason that I want you to cut up, you know, multiple little pieces is because it does take a little bit to get, you know, the hang of this. Depends on the day, whether it's filtered sunlight, direct sunlight. You do want to hold it as perpendicular to the rays of the sunlight as possible so that they are hitting it directly. If they're hitting it at an angle, then they're undercutting your mask, your marks that you've made here, and ultimately that's going to lead to having less detail in your final version. So, match these up, expose it about 10 seconds, and then run inside the house and wash it out, and we'll pick that up on the next one.